Got it. This meeting is now being live streamed. So are you going to try and tag me, or shall I do it myself?
It's just coming up with, let me make sure it's on silent.
This meeting is now being live streamed.
There we go. Stop the echo. Can I just bear with us, anybody that's watching or on the replay? I can't edit. Let me just see if I can share it to your page, which will be absolutely wonderful if I can.
It'd be marvelous, actually, marvelous. Be like a professional organization.
Slow professional. Share to a page. I don't know if that's a.
No, that won't be it.
No, it doesn't give me the opportunity.
Well, hang on. Let's see if I can do it from here.
Yeah, you'll have to grab it, I think.
Let's go to, because it'll be handy then, because then we can like see comments. Denise Chadwick. So we go here like that. Now it says, there you are. So if I do that like that, and then now what does it say here? Live chat, more like this. What do who? I don't know what's going on. Let's see. Scooby-Doo. Let's have a go. Save video to cast a bit. Oh, I don't know. No, I don't know. Well, actually, it doesn't matter now because Jana's here, Ernie's here, and I can see the comments on your page. So I'm on your page now. So if anything comes up,
so you can't share it.
What? I can't share it. There's no thing on my phone to say share for some reason.
What if you open it up?
I have done.
That's weird.
Yeah.
All right.
No, it just says live chat, top comments, your replies, more like this. Not to worry, it doesn't matter because what I'll do is I'll be able to put the link up, won't I?
Yeah. And I can
afterwards.
Also, if you want to put it anywhere, like on your YouTube or anything, I can send you the videotape.
Videotape? How old are you?
The video too.
Oh, right.
And I will not answer your question right now. Okay, so sorry about the delay, everybody. Welcome to Love Speaks Love, and my amazing, lovely guest today, and dear friend and brother, is Dr. Joseph Delaney.
Oh, full title, Joseph Peter Aloysius Delaney.
I mustn't forget the Aloysius, Joseph Peter Aloysius Delaney. And as I said, he is a doctor. He is not a medical doctor, but he has a PhD in medicine. Is that correct?
That's correct. And all that means is that I spent a long time, 7 years actually, analysing various heart rate signatures and relating them to how brain waves work. And, before that, I was a biomedical scientist. I was in charge of a haematology department. So I've basically been associated with the NHS, the National Health Service in the UK, for 50 years. Even though looking at me, you wouldn't think that I was that old, would you? So there you go.
And I'll pass almost across, like you knew some of the consultants that I worked with.
Yeah.
So I'll pass almost crossed many moons ago. And just for background, for anyone that doesn't know me, I'm talking about the time when I was a nurse at Manchester Royal Infirmary. So between us, we have a fair few years of medical background. So we've both studied the body from the biomedical point of view, from the biomedical model. And we have both had similar journeys in terms of energy as well, and interests, I think, in terms of breath work. We're both Reiki masters, and both have had a bit of a turnaround in the way we look at the body. So we've extended that, so it's not just looking at the body from the biomedical model, but extended it. So we're looking at the body in terms of energy, which for me was life-changing. And one of the things that we are both very interested, aside from the energy aspect of the body, is the fascia of the body. And this for me has been a fairly recent development, my interest in this. But you've gone really deep in this, and you've done papers on this as well. So when we spoke on Joe's show a while ago, we spoke a lot about fascia, and it's what it is in the body, that it's the connective tissue that joins everything to everything. And a lot of this information is pretty new, really, because when we both did our studying, fascia was not included in that. So this for me has been something that I've investigated on my own. And I'd love for you to share something about how you've come across fascia in your work. But as well as the energy aspect of the body being life-changing, looking at the body in terms of its fascia, what it does, and the problems that constricted fascia, often caused by stress and long-term stress, can cause. So over to you and your fascia journey, and I'm just going to get myself some water.
Okay.
But I'll be here.
I say fascia, but you know, fascia and fascia, same. So yeah, a bit like Denise. I mean, I was in a sort of a professional field of biomedicine for a long, long time, and for various reasons, I became very, very ill. And I took to drinking to try and alleviate my stress and tension. And then the drinking took to me, you know, and then I basically, to cut a long story short, I lost everything and became homeless. It's a good story. It's got a good ending, you know. And I lost my job in the health service because I was drunk on duty. Don't know whether I've ever said that on the television or whatever this thing is, this video thing before. But yeah, I lost my job through misappropriation of laboratory reagents, right? So there we go. So they found me basically unconscious one night, you know, in a right mess. And so I lost my job in the NHS, and then I was unemployed for a long time. And the drinking got hold of me much, much worse. And in the end, I lost everything. I lost my wife and kids. I lost my job. I just said that. I lost my driving license. I lost my liberty, and I lost my home, and I became homeless, you know. And in that sort of journey of going backwards, right, I sort of came to the realization that what I knew anyway, and I thought I knew a lot about medicine and stuff like that, was actually not of any consequence or any worth whatsoever, you know, really, because I tried to apply all these biomedical principles to myself, and they just didn't work. In fact, the more that I applied them, the more tense I became and the worse I got, you know. So I mean, that's just a quick snapshot of why I was interested. But then I got sort of propelled into a completely different field of sports therapy and exercise science, right? And, you know, it's almost as if I'm placed in these positions by some sort of invisible guiding force, which I know that I am, and to learn new stuff. And part of that course was to become a massage therapist. And in the understanding of massage therapy, I also, because I've spent many, many years studying martial arts as well, and I'm quite proficient in some different martial arts. And I started to understand the principles of martial arts then as well, that it was all about energy and the utilization of energy through breathing and through movement. And everything started to fall into place, really. And so the massage led me to deeper neuromuscular understandings, really, of how our muscular structure was intimately and intricately connected to the way that we process information in our brains, or if you like, before our brains, in our minds, that then transfers to our brains, that sends signals down our nervous system, which affect the way that our muscles and our skeletal system works, you know. And from that, then I got into the field of myofascial trigger points, you know, and they're basically constricted areas of myofascial tissue, which is basically connective tissue. And the way I look at it is, it's like the cling film, you know, the cling wrap that you put around meat to keep it fresh and stuff like that. I see that it's that sort of structure that surrounds all muscles, you know, and sometimes if you get a piece of steak from the butcher's, there's like this white cling filmy thing around it. Well, that thing there, although it looks boring and doesn't seem to do anything, it's actually more important than anybody could possibly realize. And medicine hasn't got their head around this at all yet. You know, this is new stuff, this, because when you link connective tissue and myofascia to the quantum realms of consciousness, they seem to switch off and, you know, send for the white coat people again. But, you know, this is where I'm up to, is that the myofascial or myofascial tissue, when it's constricted, the energy flow through those constrictions is restricted, and therefore the energy doesn't feed the underlying nervous system, which feeds everything else in the body. So to cut a long story short, my PhD research took me into an area where we did myofascial trigger point massage, especially around the head, neck, and shoulders, and we were able to show that it impacted upon the way that the heart works. And then that took me into all sorts of different things then regarding how we can change the heart signature to change the head signature to improve the way that we think, and then leaves us to a better quality of life. So that's it really in a nutshell, but that's only the start of it. Denise, back over to you.
Yeah, and you mentioned, so part of my journey, I learned kinesiology, and what I learned in kinesiology, so this was the Touch for Health course, and I did this in Australia when I first got there. And one thing I learned about the muscles is that the muscles represent all the organs of the body. So one of the things that you do in kinesiology, you test the muscles. And if there's not a lock in the muscle, there's an interruption in the flow of energy between the muscle and the organ. So there's various different techniques that you can do, often utilizing Chinese medicine, the meridians, the trigger points, the attachment and insertion points. I'm dredging almost 20 years ago learning this now, and other various things. But I just thought that was interesting as well. So the body is mapped. I'm going off point, but it feels right to say this. The body is mapped in various different parts of the body. So it's mapped on the feet, it's mapped on the hands, it's mapped in the ears. I suspect it's probably mapped around the perineum as well. I'd be very surprised if it wasn't, and around the sexual organs as well. So where else to go with this? So my journey with fascia began really quite recently. So I had a diagnosis of fibromyalgia, which is pain in the muscles and the fibrous tissue of the body. And I received that diagnosis 20 years ago because I had chronic pain, as many people do that have been stressed. And one thing that I learned recently, so I've been on this healing journey, releasing pain in my body and inflammation in my body for 20 years, but I've had the most success recently, and it's all been to do with the fascia. So we mentioned this last time, but it feels important to mention again that when the body is in fight, flight, or freeze, the fascia contracts because it gets the muscles ready to either run or fight or even freeze. Really, it kind of contracts the muscles in that way as well. So when we are chronically stressed, our fascia is chronically constricted, restricted. So the flow of energy and the flow of nutrients and messages and all sorts of other things doesn't get through the fascia. And the fascia, just to reiterate, it's not just the muscles, it connects everything to everything. So we have one organ of fascia in the body, and everything is housed within the fascia. So the bones are actually floating in your body, floating and held in place by fascia. So all of the organs, for example, the pancreas, if your fascia is constricted in one part of your body, so say it's constricted down here, because that's quite common. If this is constricted here, then you can't really lift your arm up. And it often will manifest in problems at the top of your shoulder. But also, if it's constricted anywhere, it's constricted everywhere. So when you release it in certain parts of the body, you release it everywhere, and everything starts to breathe again. It starts to move again. I think I'll go over to you. I do want to share at some point some of the recent developments in my fascia journey, because it's been magical and actually quite miraculous, the changes of late that I'm experiencing in my own body. There's still, there's still a lot going on, but I've had such strong changes that I can actually believe now that I can heal my body. Over to you.
Marvelous, marvelous. So, myofascial pain or myofascial pain syndrome, chronic fatigue, myalgic encephalomyelitis, all these things really are, as you say, in my opinion, they're constrictions in this fascial tissue, this connective tissue. Now, the muscle underneath may be perfectly healthy, but it's constricted. So if we then straighten out, like the cling film, if we straighten out the cling film, the muscle underneath goes, boof, oh my God, I feel free. And then it starts to send more and more signals through. But I honestly feel that consciousness is so intricately and intimately connected to this that I didn't realize that how I was thinking was sending specific frequencies down my nervous system to different parts of my body. And what I've got a picture of in my mind that I was given it a long time ago is at the moment of conception, there's almost like a snapshot of the universe. And this then takes us into Taoism. So where the sun is, where the moon is, where the stars are and the planets and the galaxies, that then represents a unique snapshot of who we are. And that almost then through embryonic and fetal development folds in upon itself and represents our soul's journey. And it's up to us then. The hero's journey is almost like to go from one pain to another, right, which represents something that's been constricted and some sort of karmic lesson that we need to overcome. And every time that we overcome that, either through stretching or taking an action that we've been afraid of, then we release that area and we get more flow in the whole system. I'll just say this next bit in case I forget. I don't think I'll forget anyway, because I'm sort of being fed the lines in a way. But plasma has become very important in the fourth phase of water. And water being HOH, right? H pluses are protons, right? And this is the way that the protons and the electrons interact and interrelate with one another, because believe it or not, they guide the light through the body, through the fascial system, through the fourth phase of water, right? And then it's intelligently guided to where it's required. Final thing, you have to unlock the tensions in the sequence that they were put down in. And this is so important. And you can't do that using your intellect, because your intellect might tell you the wrong thing to work on. You've got to ask your heart and your intuition and your soul, please, what do you want me to work on today? And you have to trust that process, because your intellect might say, I want to tone my gluteal muscles up, so I can have tight buns, right? But in actual fact, you may need to work on your left shoulder blade, right? And what tends to happen, and because your head will say, oh, I'm not having that. I want to look slim. I want to work on my abdominal, blah, 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 right? If you work on your shoulder blade, like you said before, sometimes there's almost like a cross training thing that goes on. You release that there. It sends that there into a different direction and it realigns us then. So it's got to be, as you know, Denise, intuitively guided from the within rather than any expert guidance from outside. Over to you.
Something I've learned recently adding to that is that you can't really totally release things from your body when you're still stressed. You can. So this has been my experience. So in a session or when I'm working on myself, I can release stuff. But because my body was chronically stressed and actually didn't know how to not be stressed, I keep looking at my shoulders because they're almost level. And this blows me away that my shoulders are almost level, because I can't remember which way around it was. But they were very, very imbalanced. And they didn't know how to not be up here. Even when I slept, my shoulders were up there. I've completely lost my train of thought there.
That's quite all right.
What was the last thing you said? Can you remember?
Got no idea. That was more than a few seconds ago. I've got no idea. It was really to do with, if you move a bit there, you've got to be intuitively guided rather than working from any external program or coach or lifestyle guru or stuff like that. It's got to be, and this is part of the journey towards self-actualization, is that the more that you can trust your intuition to guide you through the way that you feel, not what you think, through feeling, because feelings are actually representative of the energy flowing in certain parts of the body. And that's why different organs have different feelings associated with it, like venting the spleen, you know, and all this sort of thing. So there's actually so much, but you only get to know this by going inwards and sitting with your intuition, because individually it's the intuition that's going to guide us in all sorts of ways, even in practical details of like trying to navigate through this bloody lunatic world that we're living in at the moment. You know, I don't know whether I've just helped you there or made it worse. I don't know.
I remembered. So I could release a lot of energy when I'm actually working on myself, and when I'm in that process of either doing energy work on myself or in a deep meditation space. But then it would stop and my body would go back to being stressed. So there was still a lot that I wasn't actually releasing from my body. I think at this point, I'm just going to mention some people that I've come across, because the work of these guys has made a massive, massive difference. So far I've mentioned Erin Teets and fascia stretching, and that was incredible for me. And I still do fascia stretches, and it really put me in touch with my body, and parts of my body that were offline, it actually put back online, and my consciousness was able to go back into those places where it had actually shrunk from. But the people that I've been working with in terms of all their content online is a group called Human Garage, and they have shared a lot of stuff that is new even for the fascia world. And they used to work on athletes at Venice Beach in the US. And so they have years of experience working with the fascia. But one of the things they found was that people were coming to them wanting to be fixed. So they wanted to find a way that people could actually take this on themselves and do it themselves. So they've come up with these fascia maneuvers, and they're a not-for-profit organization. If you think you've got stuff going on with your fascia, I highly recommend. They have a 1-day reset, a 3-day reset, a 7-day reset, and a 28-day reset. And to do the 28-day, you need to do the 1, the 3, and the 7. And so all these maneuvers that they're showing are very different from anything anyone else is doing. And I have done all of those. And that is what has made a massive, massive difference to my body. But even on, I think it was either day 1 or day 2 of these resets. And the resets are watching some videos that have information, but also doing their maneuvers. So it might be like a 45-minute set of maneuvers, and there's a few different ones that you go through, and sometimes you repeat the same ones. But on, I think it was day 2, I noticed how much less stressed I was. And I consider myself a pretty Zen person and pretty relaxed, but I could feel things that would normally have a reaction in my body, things that would normally trigger me, weren't doing. And the biggest thing that I noticed, and this goes back to something that you said before, I noticed when I was walking down my garden that it was so much easier to walk. It was so much easier for the muscles to just do their thing. Everything is so much easier. If I twist, it's so much easier. I'm not restricted. If I raise my arm, and I've been dancing a lot recently, and it's like heaven to me, because I can dance and dance and dance, and I'm not going, ooh, ooh, and I might cover that up when I'm dancing, but it's still there. But I've got so much more flexibility in my body. And what really hit home was that if your fascia is constricted, when you're moving your muscle, it takes a lot more effort. And I was like, no wonder I've been tired for the last however long. So I noticed that I was way more energized. And that's because my muscles, because my fascia is much more open, my muscles are working so much more easily that it doesn't take as much energy. And I didn't realize, because this has been chronic for so many years, like 30 years or more, I didn't realize how your body's supposed to feel. And I've been blown. I'm like, oh my goodness, people actually feel like this. My body feels about 30 years younger, but bearing in mind, I probably felt about 90. Yeah, over to you.
Well, I'd just say you look fantastic. Honestly, you look really, really well. There's a lot of light shining from you, so whatever you're doing is working. And this is so important as well, because our other friend, Kirsty Elizabeth, she's into this area as well. And I think that many, many people are on this. I mean, we're all on this spiritual pathway to one degree or another, but there's many, many people in the spiritual community, right, who are totally exhausted at the moment. They're in pain. They can't understand why. One day they'll wake up, right, and they've got irritable bowel syndrome, and then the next day their shoulders are tense and stuff. And that's because this cleansing energy that's coming in, which is basically the universal consciousness, is coming in to highlight the areas that were blocked in. And this is basically part of the cleansing process. It's mostly to do with stimulation of the vagus nerve, which is associated with the sacred feminine. So this is a rebalancing, really. So the sacred feminine's coming in, and the sacred feminine and the vagus nerve, they're coming through back with something called a nurturing energy. It's called, there's a posh word for it called trophotropic, right? And it's basically rebalancing out, right, the overactivity of the sympathetic nervous system. Now, I'm being sort of technical here because some people might want to hear that, but thixotropy really is to do with the gunginess, right, of the connective tissue that surrounds us. And the connective tissue that surrounds us is also related to our epigenetic constitution. I'll say this as it's coming out, because then I can play this back and see what I'm going on about. But the epigenome really, it determines how our DNA expresses itself. So it's a layer above. The epi means above and surrounding. It's a layer above how our DNA expresses itself. So rather than change our DNA, we need to get rid of the cloak, the basic restricted cloak, and become naked, really. So this is like, just whipping this epigenetic cloak, which represents billions of years of conditioning and programming, But once again, we have to be guided through it. It's almost like re-engineering or reverse engineering our karmic past. I mean, I'm going on about a lot of stuff here, but what are the practical things to do? Well, I will have a look at this. This looks very interesting, but I used to do a lot of stuff called vacuum suctioning, really. And that was really to, it sucks up in a vacuum the skin and the connective tissue of the individual. And then you can do that. And it almost like goes, and it releases the muscles underneath as well, And you can actually do this as well on the chakras, the 7 major, well, not the 7, you can do it on the 5 spinal major chakras. And you can actually stick the vacuum suction cup on it and keep sort of providing this negative pressure. And what that does is it almost releases the chakra underneath, which is like an energetic vortex. And then that has, here's something here. I want to talk about healing crises. Sometimes when you get a release and the energy then floods across the body, it highlights other areas of pain then, right? But after 2 or 3 days, they generally tend to settle down, right? This is all part of the interesting journey of where the energy is being stuck and how it's now flowing like a river through the connective tissue and the myofascial tissue of the body. Over to you, Denise. By the way, myofascial means muscle, and fascia is the connective tissue that surrounds the muscle.
Thank you. And it's interesting because when I think of connective tissue, I still have this image in my brain that looks a bit like the pith of a tangerine that is quite solid. And some of our fascia is like that, like the IT band, for example, I think is always going to be like that because that's what helps us to walk on two legs. But most of it should be fluid and not crystallized and not hard. So some of the things that these guys at Human Garage have worked out is doing the fascia maneuvers with breath work. And I know you're a big believer in breath work, and this has made a massive difference. They use, it tends to be either 3, 6 or 9 breaths. And it's also linked to the 12 major meridians of the body. They talk about when you breathe through your nose, it's like the upper fascia that gets stimulated. And when you breathe through the mouth, it's, oh, that was a big shiver. It's the lower, ooh, still going on, it's the lower fascia. And another thing that they have tapped into is twisting the body. So when you are in the womb, when you are in utero, you spend a lot of time kind of like this with your arms and your legs are crossed as well. So there's something magical that perhaps takes us back to that time in the womb when all your stem cells are being stimulated and everything is growing. So some of the maneuvers, like one is called Totally Twisted. And it's ridiculously simple to do. And I think it takes us back to that time in the womb. But for example, so we mentioned last time in our talk that when there's pressure placed on the body, that causes the fascia to release. I always call them snugocytes because they're like a mix between a snail and a slug. But maybe it's fibrocytes, the actual proper name for them, but I prefer snugocytes. So those are the cells in your fascia that actually act like slugs and snails and release a substance that's a bit like snot, but it's a lubricant of the body, and it's got hyaluronic acid in it and all sorts of other amazing nutrients. It's got a lot of collagen in the fascia as well. So that gets released with pressure, and it's not that much pressure. So when you have a massage, that is often what happens. And I don't know if you said this about the cupping, but if you actually twist the fascia, that seems to make it work even better than just putting pressure on it. So I'll show you this because I can do it. So if you were working on on your arm, for example, and I'm not completely sure I'm going in the right place here, but I'm going to do it on the wrist. So if you twist your arm one way and then move your arm the other, so you've got like a counter rotation. So the hand is going that way, my left hand, and my right hand that I'm working on is going that way. And then you can do things like just gently and slowly move your fascia, and it'll feel tight, but you're also compressing it as well. So this is really good for your hands and for the energy of the hands. And this is where I know I've had problems, which is why I have the inflammation around my knuckles. So if you do this kind of thing, you'll start to, I do anyway, you start to hear it like clicking a little bit, and you know that then that is the fascia that's opening up. So that's one thing, the counter rotation. And I'm just going to share that when I found one of their exercises on YouTube, and it sent me on a mission of learning more about it. And when I saw that exercise for the hands, I actually sobbed. And I think it was just this knowing, it wasn't even a release because I'd only just started doing it, but there was something inside, I'm feeling quite emotional now. There was something inside me that went, you found your miracle here. This is what you've been waiting for. And everything that has led me to this point has been really important. But this kind of took it to another level. Over to you.
realignment of mind, also body, mind, soul, and spirit, right? That's what we're going through. See, I've got this up my spine now, and that just means carry on, son. You're on the right track, you know. So this is about realignment, and it's about understanding right from the start, really, and also the important understanding that we are being subject to forces and flows that we don't realize, subtle energy vibrations, and that's what actually is coming in now in this great big shift. And the pain is a touchstone, and it's an indication of where the blockage is, because what we're really looking for is realignment with the primary vibration of what it is to be a perfectly flowing human being, or if you like, the soul with its own purpose. So, you know, I get that thing as well as, oh God, thanks very much, I've just discovered something else to work on now, and that brings enthusiasm to me and stuff like that. So the twisting thing, we do that around the limbs when we're working on deep massage. That's one of the moves that really, you know, so we do that. There's also things as well, vibrational techniques that are coming to the fore now, like the Galileo vibration plate, which actually works. And I have friends who work with this particular instrument, where you can direct the vibrations through certain parts of their feet, and it stimulates it at such a rate that it actually starts to get the muscles and the neuromuscular stuff working. There's so many things, but the most important thing is I've been so stuck in my head that I'm being shown now that the true way forward is for people to get their heads out of the clouds and in Fantasy Island and to get back into the body. So it's almost as if the light body now has been out. It's like we've been living in a sort of out of body experience all our life. I think it's time now to get back in the body and back to ground as well. So there's so many different things, but it's, this is what's happening to me now. I've got like vibrations going up both my legs now, right? From Mother Earth, right? Up through me like perineum bits, right? And up my spine and out through the crown of my head. And this is the exhilaration they're talking about when you're sort of in the flow and being guided. That's the way I see it. Anyway, to go back to this, water's important. Understanding that there's a fourth phase of water, which is like plasma. And plasma is important as well, because it's the plasma that contains all the cells of the body. So we go through the water in the like the gooey stuff, you know, like the snot you were talking about, and then it almost starts to liquefy then and bathe the whole body then, because it works through the nervous system and works in our hematology then. Here's the important thing is then our cells, then our cell surfaces then are bathed in different chemicals which send different signals through to the stem cell nuclei, which express our DNA in a different way, in a more positive way. So this is the way, really, the cleansing energy and the washing is washing away all the shit, the shizzle, the crap, right? And it's allowing our primary DNA templates to come online. Right, and I know that I've gone into all sorts of physics and metaphysics and all that, but I can't sort of detach from the way it all locks into place now. So go on, over to you.
Yeah, that's amazing what you shared there. And I had to put my hand on my heart because I was feeling really quite emotional through that. And it's like so many truths being shared that it's like, yeah, my body's really reacting to it, which is awesome. Hydration, I'll just mention hydration, and then perhaps we can talk about structured water a little bit as well. So when your body is dehydrated, it constricts your fascia, full stop. And I think I've been chronically dehydrated. And obviously when I lived in Australia, I just found it really difficult to stay hydrated in the heat there. So that's one thing, but it's also water that is actually going to go into your cells and not just pass straight through. And I feel like we are just on the tip of finding out so much more about water and how we can bring it back to health when it's still going through the pipes that are straight and all the things that damage the energy of water. I think and there's many things out there already, like, you know, vortexes to spin the water and that kind of thing. And interestingly, so I've made these very, a little tincture, which is a rejuvenation regeneration, and I put this in my water and it tastes thicker. And when I put it in my mouthwash that I make as well, and I put some drops in, and I'd forgotten I'd put the drops in, gargled with the mouthwash, and I was like, oh, that tastes thicker, that's interesting. And then remembered that I put these drops in. Gave some water to a friend who was round at my house without the drops in, because I'd forgotten to put them in. He drank some, and then I put the drops in, and he was like, oh, it tastes thicker. And I hadn't said to him beforehand about that. So even simple things like that that we can do to bring the water back to its full health. And I do want to say as well that certain conditions of the body, for example, cancer, arthritis, and there will be many, many more than that. We think of those as being diseases. And I think it was Bruce Lipton, there was a quote from him to say, cancer is not a disease, it's a symptom. But I would also put arthritis in that as well, that arthritis is not a disease in itself, it's a symptom, and it's a symptom of constricted fascia. And when we are things that are attributed to old age, we have to remember that the older generation that we've been studying for the last 100 years or however long went through 2 world wars. They didn't know how to deal with stress. It's only recently that we know about dealing with stress. Peter Levine, amazing man. It was him, he first studied animals and the fact that animals shake the body after a stress and release the stress from the body. So we haven't known all this stuff, but things that we attribute to old age may well not be old age, but actually chronic stress in the body. Over to you.
Splendid. We have known about it, right, in the East, but it's not being translated to the West because I've studied like the works of Mantak Chia, Master Mantak Chia, and the fusion of the 5 elements, and, even in the old times when the monks used to beat themselves on the bottom with a whole load of sticks and stuff like that, that wasn't to do with, right, a destructive thing. It was to release fascia, because they used to use things called rattan sticks. And that's why before martial arts and kung fu and stuff like that, you basically do this, all over. And that's why a gorilla does that. A gorilla does that to allow the energy that's building up underneath. So this is about allowing emotional expression to come through open and flowing. There's the muscles and the skin, because skin's important in this as well. There's so much going on here. But let me just say about water, right? The water, H2O, is HOH. There's what's called the hydroxyl radical and the hydrogen, the proton, right? And that's what determines the pH of water, the concentration of hydrogen ions in water. And pH is important because too much acid is related to tension and fight and flight, you see. So that's why there's an association between realkalizing. But what I'm trying to say is you can't apply this generally to everybody, because some people are already over-alkalized, right? And they actually need some more acidic balance as well. So that's why I'm saying it's so important that you can't make a general statement, that the individual has to work with their own intuition and be guided into that, And then there's that thing about lemon juice, even though it's like citric acid, it causes alcohol. I can't go along with a lot of this stuff, because it doesn't make sense to me in my proper scientific head, So all I'm trying to say is all this external information is good. It's still theory until you apply it to yourself and see whether it works for you, slowly but surely. But just to go to this one now about the cancer, I had a long time ago that if you keep sending negative signals and poisoning your cells, they're ordinary cells. What are they going to do? They're going to say, I'm not having this. I've tried to send them information back to say, look, there's an inflammation and irritation here, but I'm going to have to start defending myself in some way. And that's why I say that we want to be fighting cancer. We want to be understanding it and loving it. Now that's my view. And I know there'll be people on here who've gone through the process. They may have a different view of this. But what I'm trying to say is if we can understand this at depth, and allow this cleansing energy while sends us signals, we can move in a certain way so that the signals and the flow can go to different places. I'm sure that the world will become a better place.
That and over to me.
Yeah.
Yes, I 100% agree with you there. And what you say is so important for the body, to love the body, to really gently, if there's something going on with an area of your body, to gently tune into your body, lovingly ask it what's going on, what's the message for you, and what does it need? How can you help your body? So the body has its own consciousness, it has its own wisdom. And when we learn to tune into that, but in a really loving way, like it's so important. And I agree with you in the, it feels too combative, however you pronounce that word, to be fighting things in your body. That's not to say, if you kind of submitting, there's something about the opposite extreme of submitting. So when you're fighting, you've got a strong energy about you. So I can see that there could be benefits from that. But I agree with you. For me, it's more about loving the body and maybe even loving the tumor as well, instead of just rejecting it, actually loving it. And when I work with my body and with the energy of my body, I'm much more in the space of love for it, bringing the energy, the discordant energy, into my heart, which feels like a beautiful transmutation chamber. So breathing it into my heart so that it changes its polarity, would you say, so that it changes and just becomes less distorted. I think I want to ask you about the alkali acid balance, and I'll do that in a second, but I just want to go back to Human Garage, and they've done these things to work with your organs. So if you release the fascia above those particular organs, because the skin is above that organ, if you release the fascia in the skin above the organ, you're actually then sending a boost of energy to the organ as well. So they have videos for that. But what I wanted to ask, and this is me probably coming in as an ex-renal nurse, so an ex-kidney nurse, and knowing that the kidneys are responsible for the acid-base balance in the body. So I've never understood how your body can be too alkaline, or is it just that, or too acidic? Is it just that in the process of making it less acidic, it's actually taking other things from the body that would be useful? I just wonder if you can explain that to me.
Yeah, it's not the kidneys, it's the signals that the kidneys receive from the hypothalamus and what's going on in the midbrain, because the hypothalamus is like it's almost like the soul's detective agency, really. And as you know, is the hypothalamus determines the osmolarity and the osmolality, so the actual the mineral content and the electrolyte content of the body is all sensed up here from the hypothalamus, right? So that will determine, but also as well, Denise, as you know, potassium, right, is important in renal dialysis as well, and getting all the other electrolytes balanced. So there's balances between the chloride ions, potassium, sodium, and all sorts of different minerals. So all these are in this great big like soup. You see, I've got this coming up again, right? And the only thing I can think of here is, how can we reset the balance and know we're doing it? And I worked as a senior research fellow in medicine, in renal medicine for 5 years, right? But I never completely agreed with how they came to their calculations, really. You see what I mean? Because it never felt, and I tried to introduce things like reflexology and massage, because while you're sitting there for 3 to 4 to 5 hours on a dialysis machine, it's as boring as hell, you're right? And you're doing it for 3 times a week, So I tried to bring it in. Half of the consultants loved the idea. The patients all loved it, right? but half of them thought it was woo-woo, and they were the ones that basically kicked it out in the end. Anyway, I digress into politics. But what I'm trying to say is, in the amygdala and the limbic system of the body, it's been shown that the pH determines your emotional reaction to life and the signals it sends back to your conscious mind. So if you're afraid and your sympathetic nervous system is kicking out all these toxic chemicals, it changes the pH in your midbrain, which sends defensive signals to your whole body. Right. So see, look, keep going, son. You're on the right track here, you know. So the amount of toxicity that's in the world now, chemical toxicity, and this could take us back to fetal development in the womb and all that, but that's another story. We'll have to come on another time, you know. Mineral composition and the exact balance can only be determined by your intuition. And that's why what you eat and what you ingest and what you take in fluid-wise, I think it needs to be regulated and guided by the subtle vibrations of your intuition. And this is why I don't go wholeheartedly with the we should all be vegans and vegetarians, because I think that some people need to be meat eaters, you know, for various, it's a bit like you know, pregnant women craving sort of chalk and stuff like that. The body will tell you what it requires, you know, if you can be trusting enough to listen to what it's saying to you. I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but what I'm saying is, please, more than anything else, is more and more now your intuition will be coming online, and it's almost as if everything that you've been told up to this point hasn't worked. So we need to disregard everything that we've ever known and just listen from one moment to the next of how our intuition and our innate intelligence is guiding us individually. Because, Denise, you might need to take some more iron and I might need to have less iron. It will be up for, you know, so you might need a whole load of liver, right? And I might need a load of apples, you know, I don't know. But it's almost like becoming so self-aware and sensitive to your body signals, right, that will guide you through what's coming up next, really. Christ, I've got no idea. I'll have to pay this back to see what I'm going on about, you know, but over to you. So water's so important. And here's the other thing as well, therapeutic touch. Touch is so important. See, when we do this with therapeutic touch and allow the loving energy to come through, it's almost like that touch immediately stops, you know, it relaxes us, you know. But we're in such a culture now, the whole thing about touching other people, it's almost like there's a conspiracy to stop us getting close and understand. I'm not even going to go down there. But my thing is, I do a talk called Cleaning Up Our Act. You know, this is really about becoming super aware of what we're drinking, what's in it, what we're eating, what we're injecting into ourselves and all that. We need to be so supremely sensitive and courageous about saying no if we need to. I'm going to shut up now because I'll get into trouble.
Thank you. There's a few things to speak to there. I'm curious, actually, when the renal stuff, when was that? What years?
That was 2002. It was around about 2002.
That is so interesting, because that's about the same time that I was introducing Reiki to the hospital. And some of the consultants, my consultants, were really open to it and some were really dead against it. But I was doing a little bit of Reiki on patients, our patients, with referrals from the consultants that were open to it.
So was I. Used to close the curtains, you know, right? And I'd be in there doing Reiki on them. Sometimes the curtain would go up, like, "What are you doing?" "Oh, no, relaxation therapy." Right, you know. But you know, it brings us, doesn't it? It brings us into different areas of neural plasticity and spiritual bioregenesis. I think that we're all in this area now where, because cells are plastic, I think that anybody's got the ability now to sort of almost like regrow things that have been diseased or ill at ease or out of alignment. But maybe that's a story for a different day.
And there's another Dr. Joe Dispenza, who's been having massive success with this and putting into the field miracles like stage 4 cancer reversing, blindness reversing after a stroke, like many years after a stroke, and various things, that once you put them into the collective field, it's in there. So someone else with that same condition, it's like created a pathway that someone else, I've got that goosey feeling again, that someone else can go down. And you mentioned minerals. We're talking miracles, but I will just say that I've started taking Irish sea moss as well. That has 92 minerals in it. But a lot of the improvements in my body were before I started doing that. So it's not all down to that.
Can I just say this, just to sort of, it's almost like a disclaimer, but I don't want anybody to believe a single word I say at all. No, seriously, you know, because I'm not giving anybody any advice here. I'm just sharing what I'm learning about me and applying it to me. I'm coming up to 69 years of age. You know, I feel like a 17-year-old. In fact, some of the thoughts I have get me into a lot of trouble, you know, but I feel fantastic, and I feel like I'm only just scratching the surface now of what's possible from a human potential point of view. And medicine may be trying to block all this now because it's terrified now that it's losing its grip on things, you see. But, you know, I think in the end, you know, like paradigm shifts, they violently oppose new stuff. And then suddenly they'll probably say, oh, no, we knew that anyway. You know, we would, you know. So all I'm saying is don't believe a single word I say. You are responsible for taking this information and trying it out if you want to. But please don't say that Denise and Dr. Joe told you to do it because we didn't. There we are. Zip.
Yeah, nice disclaimer. And that's what we're doing. We're sharing what's worked for us. And not everyone, as we've said in this, is going to be on the same journey. Yeah. So do your own research, basically, and find out what works for you. And, you know, you can try things and just see how your body feels. And there's many, many, many different ways to heal your body. There's a lot of talk about the successive scalar waves at the moment and med beds, you know, and I feel there's going to be many routes. It's not like there's just one and this will work for everybody. There's going to be many choices, you know, with light and sound as well. We both work with light and sound. There's so much out there.
Well, let me just say that, because you know that they gave me this word. They said, Joe, you'll be working with the field of chromatooptogenetics. I said, thanks very much for that. What do you mean? All right. So I have to go, you know, can you explain it to me? Well, chromato, Joe, chromatic means, what does it mean? It means to do with color. Well done, son. But it also means that there's a chromatic scale on a piano, isn't there? With 12 different notes. Pay attention to that, Joe. Number 12. And I go, okay, there's the 12 again, you know. And optogenetics means the way that light impacts upon the cells of the body to change how the way or cause the DNA to express itself in a certain way. So chromato, it's the use of sound and light. And I think that the whole medbed thing is the information that's coming through me is, Joe, they'll only be very short term, those, because people will be able from their interior, right, when they sit with certain colors and lights and stuff like that, guided by their intuition, they'll be able to reset themselves from within, you know, and therefore there'll be self-reliance and not relying on anything external. But obviously there's going to be some sort of a transitional period here, right? And this is more to do with physics than anything else and metaphysics. Just let me say one more thing, because it's all coming in now. That if our attitude and our mood state, if one is nervousness, irritability and discontent, that will send those signals to the body. Okay. And the irritability, right, which is basically an egocentric thing, right, because we're not getting our own way, right, the irritability, right, will cause an inflammatory response, and it's a low grade inflammatory response, right. It's that we need to become aware of. Do I feel irritated on the inside? Am I irritated in my mind? Why is that? It's because some person, place, thing, or situation isn't going the way that I think it should do. So that's directly linked to expectations, right? So then we have to work from the mind perspective as well. Christ, I'm not half going on, but it's just the way that it all sort of topples into place, really. Sorry, Denise.
Good points. Good points. Okay, we're coming up. We are on the hour. Is there... How are you for time, Joe? Do you need to...
Yeah, no, I'm all right. You tell me. We can do it up to another 15 minutes if you want to.
If there are any questions, then stick them in the comments. Is there anything else that you're feeling is really important to share in this conversation that we're having?
Yeah, what I've learned is that my problem was egocentricity. And let me just qualify what I mean by that. That egocentricity really is when our ego perceives a threat, it automatically, until we become aware of it, it automatically goes into a defense arousal response, which is called the fight and flight response. That then spews in all sorts of toxic chemicals into our bloodstream if over a long period, so if we're in chronic stress, then we're in this irritated state, then therefore there's this low-grade inflammation going on all the time. So our stem cells are being fed with toxic signals, you see. So this is the whole thing. So the body, mind, soul, spirit connection, it's all going on, right, in all those things at the time. So egocentric contraction, how do you know when you're in it? Because you can feel it. You feel tense, and then this restricts the energy flow. And I just want to say another thing as well, that there's things called meridians. They're basically to do with traditional Chinese medicine. If you're in Hindu or Indian philosophy, they're called nadis, right? In other areas, they're called axial lines. In other areas, that there's so many different ways to describe this, but they're basically just channels of energy flow. But now the thing I've found out is there's not only these axial lines, which are invisible, but they actually now feed magnetically, they impact upon the electrical system underneath. So this is a magneto-electric effect. How can you build up the flow of this magnetism so that can unblock and use the nervous system in a different way? The more that you open your heart up, the more that this charismatic healing energy comes out, the more that your nervous system is guided by it. And the more then, if you understand then that when you feel disturbed or pain, there's a block there that needs looking at. That's the way that your intuition guides you, And some people can call that being guided by the Holy Spirit or innate intelligence or intuition or inner guru. Call it what you like, but best pay attention to your feelings first rather than your thoughts.
Yeah, thank you. And just to mention, we mentioned this on our last chat, but it feels an important thing to mention now relating to what you said, that fascia is both electric and magnetic, and not that many things in the body, it tends to be one or the other, but fascia is both. Now there's a question, but I'm not sure I understand it. I'm going to read it out. How do you think colour healing would work? Is that through vein, V-E-I-N, healed by others or self?
Well, my feeling is that, if you look at the chakras, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet, the reason that they're different colors is because of different frequencies of electromagnetic radiation, right? I would say that, how do you know that do you need red or do you need blue, right? Well, if you put your hand on your heart and sink deep and say, what color do I need? Your intuition will say you need a bit of blue today. So it's almost like once again being guided, right? Because my feeling again is, how do I know that your blue, Denise, is my blue? You see what I mean? Because perceptually, we may be picking up the same electromagnetic frequency, but your perception may see it as red and mine blue. You see what I mean? So what I'm trying to say is, when you go to people and they say, oh, you need a bit of blue, my feeling is, okay, and I'll put it in my heart and say, do I? And I'll get, nah, take no notice. or no, if it rings true, they're on, we're on the same wavelength, So this is all about resonant frequencies. It's all about resounding. That's what resonance is. It's resounding. So there may be a particular tone. And this is the underlying basis for the Kabbalah, really, or the Kabbalah. Because that works with different spheres of consciousness. And where there used to be 10, there's now been another 2 reconnected, if you like. So we're once again working with the 12 sphere tree of life. Okay. And so once again it's almost like we've been reconnected to the whole template of what's possible for all human beings on the planet. But if you think you've got to work on one sphere when really you've got to work on another one up there. And the other thing is, I don't really do higher and lower vibrations. I think it's all, you might need to come in and work with really, really deep vibrations in order to rebalance the fantasy island stuff that we've been coming up with, you know. That's the way I explain it, really. So maybe we need really deep bass things to get our feet back on the ground, so all that information can start to come through then and percolate and sort of, you know, embody us, you know, the soul or the light body embodying us. No idea, Denise.
Thank you. And I think a lot of these things are helping the body to heal itself. And there's definitely something to be said about the empowerment of doing things yourselves. But sometimes it just feels a little overwhelming. So that's when it can be helpful to go and see a practitioner, or, as we mentioned, you know, things like the med beds or whatever as an interim thing. But I feel we still have to do the work. It's not about just handing it over to someone else and saying, you fix me. We still have to do the inner work, however that looks. And as we said before, that can be about tuning into your body. And as you said, if someone suggests something to you, you want to check in with yourself. One way that I do it is a kinesiology, like a lock. So I'll ask my body, show me yes, which is a lock. So my finger and thumb there won't open. Show me no, my finger will slip through. And I do that quite often as a question. Show, you know, is this helpful for me? And I kind of know the answer as I'm doing it, but it's just extra kind of confirmation. And so much in our body is related to the trauma that's held in the body. So that's a lot of the work of releasing the trauma. And there's so many different ways of doing that, but we can really help ourselves in this.
What's coming to my mind as well is mindfulness. And what is mindfulness? It's sitting with discomfort, right? Sitting with it and taking a step back and almost like observing and witnessing it, rather than emotional reacting and trying to find some way to treat the symptoms of it. The underlying thing is that there's a sort of a lesson in it, really, you know, if you want to call it lessons, you know, and maybe it's just a simple case of where you said yes, you should have said no. So it's going back and saying, look, I said yes there, I've changed my mind. But what we do is our amygdala hijacks us. It brings in the old habits of, well, if I say the opposite now, what will they think of me? And my view is now, what will you think of yourself, right? For keeping yourself in the pain when you know that the right action is to go and neutralize what you've done before. So once again, this is about the journey towards self-actualization and also overcoming emotional disturbance based upon childhood patterns of behavior, you know. There's so much, you know, Denise, but in the end, it sounds complicated, this, but if you just focus on your feelings and ask your heart, what's the right way forward here? It'll tell you dead clearly, right? Turn left at the bottom of the road. But if your head's adamant that it wants to turn right, that's what causes the disturbance, really, because we're out of line with our soul's sort of journey almost, you know.
And connecting with our soul, our higher self, whatever words you want to use, is so useful, and kind of not handing over necessarily, that sounds disempowering, but working with your higher self. And I'm always asking my higher self, you know, what are we doing here? How do I deal with this? If something comes in, how do we deal with this? What do we need to do to move forward with this? And what am I being shown here? Like you say, a lesson or whatever, but what is this for me? Like, why is this come into my world?
It's like it becomes, you know, when you get to a certain bit, when you've practiced it a bit, it becomes we, doesn't it? It becomes a partnership, a collaboration between like divine and human and stuff like that. That's the way I see it. So it's a partnership. And sometimes I'll say to the higher power, I'm not having that. Right. Is there some other sort of thing that we can choose? And then I sort of get it, oh, all right then, well, what about this? And it's almost like both sides have to come together in this sacred union, and it goes forward then, you know. So it's a collaboration, you know. Denise, I don't know. I'm like you, is I'm learning step by step as I go along, and I haven't got anything cracked, but I'm just going to keep going on this like internal operating system, right, until it like doesn't work anymore, and then I'll have to find a different way, but
And
I
things
don't
that
know.
worked for us last week or 2 years ago or whatever may not necessarily work for us today. There's definite advantage to having flexibility in this and not being too rigid with what we believe, what we perceive, and just being open to new ideas coming in, new whatevers.
Yeah, because I mean, what's fixed? I mean, I don't fix anything at all. It's got to be free flowing, because as you say, tomorrow I need to stand up for myself, but today I might have to back off. You know what I mean? So, because if you can't do both of those, once again, you're limited, aren't you? If you can only ever turn left instead of going right. I mean, there's so much stuff. You mentioned spin before, there's like vortices in our hemispheres as well. And my friend Elsa Dillon, she talks about spin beings and stuff like that. And she does all these spinning techniques like the whirling dervishes, because what's actually happening is our hemispheres then are sort of like spinning in different directions. And once the frequencies match, there's like a piece that comes in and we get flooded with new information to carry us forward, So it's matter, antimatter, yin and yang, up and down, left and right. There's so many things coming back into alignment. But as you say, we have to take action on this information. We have to act on the information received. And I'm not suggesting that we don't go to external people for help. But as you said, is stick the information in your heart. And if it's, but like you, I used to do a lot of pendulum dowsing, and I don't need to do that anymore. I just get a sense in my heart of that's right, that's wrong, and stuff like that.
So I'm getting a nudge to see, do we finish with a little light language blessing, or are we just keeping it on the straight and narrow today?
I think, because I said that before, and I thought, no, I don't want to do that, right? I think we've been relatively, in the field of, acceptability. And I think if any of my work colleagues, that might just be a bridge too far, that one, but, Denise, I don't know, the whole light language thing. What I get about the light language thing is different frequencies of tones through the 12 spheres, right? And almost will be guided. And sometimes when you're working with this stuff, your own light language comes out. If that starts to happen, then you're definitely on the right path, then I would suggest, and you're not being possessed. So can we maybe park that one to maybe next time?
Absolutely. And how can people get hold of you if so you have a YouTube channel, you're on Facebook, and you have your own show as well?
They can't really get hold of me, or I'd ask them not to, because I'm just overloaded with stuff. I've just gone back into my academic side now, and I've got a couple of groups of medical people to supervise and stuff. So I'm not sort of touting for business or anything like that. I just get the impression that I just need to keep putting this stuff out because it does seem to be helping people. So if people message me and stuff like that, I'm not being rude if I don't answer them. I'm just trying to protect my own sort of energy structure, really, because sometimes I go in my emails and my heart drops and I think, well, hang on a second, So the answer is just keep watching my Facebook page or the YouTube channel, and I might have new stuff coming out,
So what's the name of your YouTube channel?
It's called Getting Real with Dr. Joe.
And that is also the name of your chat show as well, isn't it?
It is, because what I do is that's the live one, and then I download the thing and upload it onto YouTube then. But where else is there's also another channel called the I Am Approach. What's it called? The I Am Connection Live. That's another YouTube one I set up a while ago, but I've sort of come away from that now. Denise, I'm always trying to sort of refine things and go down one channel, and I haven't found it yet, because I've got all these other things coming in as well,
And just to mention that you're doing a 12-part series for the Solargy Network as well. So if this interests you, you're doing a 12-part series. You've done 2 so far, which have been really informative, and they're giving a lot of the science behind the woo-woo. as well. So if anyone, it's around about $12 a month, I think. And you don't just get Dr. Joe for that. There are many other people that have broadcasts on there. Todd Medina has set all this up, and there's all of his shows on there as well, and many, many, many other people coming on board for that. So for that amount, you get a lot for that as well. It's going to grow.
I agree. It's a magnificent concept, really. It is cheap, you know, and I don't make any extra money out of it. What I'm doing is it's an educational resource. So 12 1-hour sessions, one every fortnight. I actually did the third one last night, but it's not been uploaded yet, you know. But the whole thing is, it's called the I Am approach to health and well-being. And it basically looks at physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual. But I mean, as people listening to this will probably realize, is it's guided first and foremost from the spiritual dimensions, really. And it's about subtle energy medicine, and it's moving away from intellect and into intuition, you know. So it's how do we allow that then to show us what we need to do physically, emotionally, and mentally, you know, stuff like that. So yeah, and I'm enjoying that as well. And I haven't planned out or got it fixed, because people ask questions of the sessions, and so I answer those on the next session and stuff like that, you know. I'm only learning like you, Denise, you know, and I think we're learning more and more quickly if we can just like discard our fear and just go with it, really.
Yeah, thank you. And I will just say that I have a YouTube channel with all of the Love Speaks Love shows on, and that is Inner Peace with Denise. And I have a second YouTube channel, Heartful Living with Denise. And you can follow me on Facebook as well, Denise Chadwick. And I'm doing regular gatherings. We do a monthly-ish, probably more like 6 weeks, dragon immersion. And what I've been doing as well is actually gathering people together to focus on certain parts of the body. So we've done the eyes, we've done the teeth and gums, the digestive system, and the next one is going to be the fluid system of the body, which covers a lot of the body. It's not just the kidneys and the bladder, but you've got fascia in there. You've got like, it's in all the cells. So this I think is going to be the next one, and it's going to be a big one. And I haven't put that out there yet, but I will do. That will be on my page. There's also my business page on Facebook, which is Denise's Frequency of Love page. And I've just started doing dragon readings, and I've only done one so far, and I absolutely love doing it. And this is tuning into the body as well, and giving a bit of a body scan and a body reading. That's what was the first one. But there's quite broad scope for that, of like connecting with your dragons. There's a lot to that. So if that interests anybody, then just get in touch. Thank you.
No, thank you, Denise. I've loved that. It's gone very, very quickly, which is always a good sign. And I think that we're just touching the surface of it now. But my big thing is that, you know, it's all very well having all these theories, but if you don't put it into practice, it never changes anything really at all, you know. And is to take it easy, you know, one breath at a time, one step at a time, and just sort of step back after you've done something new, and almost like reflect upon it and see whether it's giving you more vitality or less, you know, and work with it that way, you know. So thank you, my love. It's so lovely to see you, and we'll maybe do this further down the line at some point.
Yeah, definitely. And thank you to everyone who's been with us. It's been awesome to read your comments and just feel you with us. And I know some of you have shared. So if you think this will be helpful to anyone, then do please share it along.
And I'm definitely going to have a look at that. What's it called? Human Garage site. That looks interesting.
Yeah.
Right. Is that us done then?
I will stop the live. Thank you, everybody. Thanks for being with us. Lots of love.
Thanks, everybody.